Hey everybody, it is Chris, and it is time to talk about the Druid in the 2024 Player's Handbook. Now, of all the classes, a lot of classes had a lot of changes. Of the spellcasters, the Druids might have had the most changes. We had some pretty significant changes with the Sorcerer and the Warlock, but I think the Druid has more changes than that, as well as major revisions to subclasses. In this video, I'm going to go through everything for the base Druid and everything for all the subclasses. I'm going to show everything up on your screen so you know how it exactly works. I will also give my opinions. I will tell you what's different from the 2024 Player's Handbook. And when it comes to subclasses, I'll do my best to rank them for you. Before we get going, I will just simply ask this. If you are not subscribed now, subscribe. I am trying to get to 100,000 subscribers, and I'm getting close. So, boy, every subscription would really count. It really mean a lot to me. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe before going any further. Let's get into the Druid. And we're going to start with the core Druid traits and significant change here, which is under armor training. So, in 2014, the Druid got medium armor and shield training, and now they're only going to get light armor and shield training. But there was a prohibition on wearing metal armor in the 2014 rules, and that is now gone. Now, there's been debate, and I'm sure I'll get comments down below. There's no prohibition. It didn't say you couldn't wear metal armor. It just said you won't wear metal armor, and I choose to. Whatever. I don't care. Those rules are going away, so we don't have to have that conversation anymore. Now you can definitely wear metal armor, but there are no metal armors that are light armor, so you're going to need to get that armor training through some other means, whether it's a feat or through multi-classing. Okay, but big change there. Let's move on to the rest of the Druid. Oh, I should also mention the 2014 rules made a differentiation between wooden shields and other shields. Of course, most shields are not made of metal, or if they have metal, they don't have very much. So I'm not sure I understood the differentiation. So now a shield is a shield, and a Druid can use it, and it's no concern. Here is our Druid features class chart, and it looks mostly the same. The two differences you should notice is, number one, there's a wild shape column now. So in the 2014 rules, at second level, the Druid got wild shape, and it scaled with their level, but uses didn't scale. You always had two uses, and you got them back on a short rest, though when you got to level 20, then you got unlimited uses. But from levels 2 through 19, no change at all. Now we can see it starts at 2 at level 2, and then it's going to go to 4 by level 20. And unlike before, we're not going to get all our uses back on a short rest anymore. We're going to get one use back on a short rest, and all uses back on a long rest. So whether this is more or fewer wild shapes per day really depends on how many short rests you take. But I would imagine that at level 2, you're probably looking at fewer, or at worst the same, or at best the same. And then by level 6, then things get debatable. So I like the fact that the uses scale with level. I think features like this should become, when they're central to the class especially, they should become more powerful with level. So I'm good with that. The other change we're going to see is prepared spells. The old Druid got prepared spells based on their level plus their wisdom modifier. Now it's set, so it doesn't matter what your wisdom modifier is anymore. It's just based on your Druid level, and you can see it starts at 4, and it will end at 22. This is probably fewer prepared spells over your career than the old 2014 Druid had, but not a lot. It's going to be very close. One other thing I should mention is the cantrips column, which is the same as the 2014 Druid, but like with all the spellcasting classes, when you level up, you can switch out one cantrip now. And I think this was basically added to all the classes in Tasha's, and it's carried over to the 2024 Player's Handbook. Level 1, we're going to get Druidic. So Druidic is a specialized language that just Druids get. 2014 Druid had it as well, but here we're also going to add, while learning this ancient tongue, you also unlock the magic of communicating with animals. You always have Speak with Animals prepared. and this is a ritual spell, so you can cast it without spell slots if you use the extra casting time, or you can use your spell slots if you want to cast it more quickly. So that is one additional preparation you're going to get, but you're not going to choose it. You're going to get it automatically because you're a druid. Then Primal Order, this is a brand new feature. Okay, so we can choose one of two options. This is very similar to a feature that the Cleric is going to get, but this is more nature-based. But we're going to start with, we can be a Magician, in which case we know one additional cantrip from the Druid spell list. In addition, your Mystical Connection to nature gives you a bonus to your Intelligence, Arcana, or Nature checks. The bonus equals your Wisdom modifier. So both Arcana and Nature are based on Intelligence normally. A Druid normally isn't going to have a great Intelligence, just can't afford it because you're focusing on your Wisdom. You want to have a good Dexterity, good Constitution. Not much left for Intelligence. So things like Arcana, being that the Druid is a primary spellcaster, or Nature, because they're a Druid, you would think Druids would be good at. So being able to add your primary ability modifier is going to make a significant improvement to those skills. Or you can choose Warden, and then you are trained for battle. You're going to gain proficiency with martial weapons and training in medium armor. So that's one way you can put metal armor on your Druid, is by selecting the Warden option here. All right. Wild Shape is one of the biggest changes to the Druid, maybe the biggest change to the Druid. So in the 2014 version, you were able to select beasts up to a certain challenge rating based on your level, and it was different if you were a Moon Druid. And then you could select swimming forms at a certain level, and then you could select flying forms at a certain level as well. And when you Wild Shaped, use your action, and then you would take the form of the beast, and what you do is you take your own statistics, throw them away, you would replace them with the new statistics of the beast. You would keep certain things. You kept your Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. I think you kept your saving throws. There were a lot of things that were kind of weird, like racial traits. You weren't sure necessarily which ones applied and which ones didn't. It was ones that you could physically use or something like that, and it wasn't clearly defined. We're going to get much clearer rules for Wild Shape and very different rules for Wild Shape. Now, if you were following the playtest, I could save you some time. You can skip to the next timestamp because there were no changes from the final playtest for Wild Shape. Otherwise, if you weren't following the playtest, here's how it works now. First off, we already talked about number of uses. So you're going to scale with level. You're going to get one back on a short rest, get them all back on a long rest. Second change is the action used to use your Wild Shape. It is now a bonus action. Now, in the old rules, if you were a Moon Druid, it was a bonus action, but for all other Druids, it was an action. Now it's a bonus action for every Druid. So just like the 2014 Player's Handbook, the duration is half your Druid level. Then we are going to have known forms. Now, in the 2014 rules, you could take the form of any beast that you qualified for that you had seen before. But there was no mechanism determining whether you had seen a certain creature or not. Obviously, anything you came across in gameplay, you've seen, but whether you've seen things outside of gameplay, you had to just kind of figure that out with your DM. Now, what we're going to do is known forms. You know 4 beast forms for this feature, chosen from the beast stat blocks that have a maximum challenge rating of 1/4 and that lack a fly speed. And then they recommend a few forms. And these are statistics that are in the back of the Player's Handbook. So rat, riding horse, spider, wolf, they're there. I cannot show you stat blocks. That is part of the embargo. So you will not be seeing those in this video. But most of the creatures have stayed relatively similar to the way they were before. I'm going to talk about a couple notable changes when we get to Moon Druid. But for terms of most Druids, when they use Wild Shape, they use it for utility. So if you want to turn into a rat and sneak your way through the enemy lair, and they just think you're a regular rat, you can still do that. Okay. And whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace one of your known forms with another eligible form. And then we're going to have some scaling with your level. So you can see here there's a beast shapes table. We got Druid level 2, known forms 4, max CR 1/4, fly speed no. Then when we get to level 4, we know up to 6 forms, up to half challenge rating, but still no fly speed. And then Druid level 8, 8 forms, up to 1 CR, and yes, you can have a fly speed once you get to level 8. And I just want to highlight this. It says here, when choosing known forms, you may look in the monster manual or elsewhere for eligible beasts if the dungeon master permits you to do so. In other words, there are some beast stat blocks at the end of the player's handbook, and there's quite a few between challenge ratings 1/4 and 1. So if you are playing a druid, there's plenty there to choose from. You don't need to look in any other sources. But with Dungeon Master permission, you can look in other sources. If you are a Moon Druid and the DM decides not to give you permission to look in other sources, I would not play a Moon Druid because there's one beast stat block above challenge rating 1. So I think shopping the monster manual, as much as I really didn't want this to be the case for the Moon Druid, it's got to be the case for the Moon Druid now. There's just no other way around it unless you're playing at lower levels. Then it says, rules well shapeshifted. While in a form, you retain your personality, memories, and ability to speak, and the following rules apply. And I want to mention that we already have a change here, because in the 2014 rules, you couldn't speak while you were in wild shape. That's so annoying when you're trying to role play with your friends and your character cannot speak. So I'm very happy that now you can speak in your wild shape form. Okay, and one of the biggest changes to wild shape is right here, temporary hit points. When you assume a wild shape form, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to your druid level. This is in exchange for changing your hit points for the beast form. So if you were to select the beast in the 2014 rules that had 10 hit points, you get 10 hit points, and it replaces your current hit points. And when you lose those 10 hit points, you are knocked out of your wild shape form and back into your druid form. Now, what you would do is you would ignore the fact that that beast gets 10 hit points. It doesn't matter to you at all. You're just going to gain a number of temporary hit points equal to your druid level, and if you lose those temporary hit points, you do not lose your wild shape form. You lose your wild shape form when the duration runs out. So, significant difference there. Game statistics. Your game statistics are replaced by the beast stat block, but you retain your creature type. That's new. It used to be replaced by that of the creature, which was a beast. You retain your hit points. That's new. You retain your hit point dice. That's new. Then you retain your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores. That we did before. You retain your class features as before. Your languages and your feats. You also retain your skill and saving throw proficiencies and use your proficiency bonus for them, in addition to gaining the proficiencies of the creature. If a skill or saving throw modifier in the beast stat block is higher than yours, you use the one in the stat block. Okay, so that's how that works. Notice it doesn't say anything about species traits there, so if you have species traits, presumably you do not access them anymore when you are in wild shape. So, for example, I should say, if you are an orc, you cannot use Adrenaline Rush if you are wild shaped. Okay? No spell casting, you can't cast spells, but shape shifting doesn't break your concentration or otherwise interfere with a spell you've already cast. That's the same. When we get to the Moon Druid, we're going to see there's an exception to this rule. But until we get to high levels, it's the same as any Druid in 2014. And then objects. Your ability to handle objects is determined by the form's limbs rather than your own. There's no mechanics for this. This is just going to be your common sense. Okay? In addition, you choose whether your equipment falls to your space, merges with your new form, or is worn by it. Worn equipment functions as normal, but the DM decides whether it's practical for the new form to wear a piece of equipment based on the creature's size and shape. So, for example, if you are wearing armor and then you turn into a horse, your armor isn't changing shape to fit the horse, so you will not be able to wear it, right? Presumably, unless your DM is very strange, but that means you can either have it merge with your form or drop next to you. Your equipment doesn't change size or shape to match the new form, as I was just talking about, and any equipment that the new form can't wear must either fall to the ground or merge with the form, which I just mentioned. Equipment that merges with the form has no effect while you're in that form. So, for example, if you merge your armor with your wild shape, you don't get the benefit of that armor. Okay, that's all the changes to Wild Shape. Pretty significant. I gotta say, this is less clunky than the previous version. It is more clear how it works. Now, I know there was very, very passionate players on both sides of the whether we should be shopping stat blocks or using templates debate. The debate is over. Okay, this is what we ended up with. So, I was on the template side, but I'm not going to whine about it. This is what we got, and it is still better than what we had in 2014. I did a whole video series on how hard Wild Shape was to figure out, like, even how it worked and all the clunky mechanics involved. And those have mostly been addressed here. So this is a much more clear version of Wild Shape than 2014, and I am glad for it, despite the fact it's not exactly what I was hoping for. Level 2! We're still on level 2. Wild Companion. Wild Shape was a big one. Wild Companion is from Tasha's. It allows you to expand the use of your Wild Shape in order to cast the Find Familiar spell, which you can do as an action, which is kind of nice. So normally Find Familiar takes a long time to cast, and we can cast it without material components. When you cast a spell this way, the Familiar is Fey, and it disappears when you finish a long rest. So the change from Tasha's is the duration. In Tasha's, I forget what the duration was. It might have been an hour per Druid level or something like that. But one way or the other, it didn't last until you finished a long rest. So now you're going to cast it. Unlike the regular Find Familiar that lasts until the Familiar disappears or you dismiss it, now it is just going to last until your next long rest. But that's not bad. I mean, it does mean that what you can't do is use your Wild Shape before you rest, and then you have your Wild Shape back after your rest as well as your Familiar. You won't be able to do that, and I think that's probably good. Level 3, we're going to choose our subclass, and we're going to choose from Circle of the Land, Circle of the Moon, Circle of the Sea, and Circle of the Stars. Circle of the Land and Circle of the Moon are both reprints from the 2014 Player's Handbook, and both have had heavy redesign. So they're both very, very different. You'll hardly recognize them. Circle of the Sea is brand new, and then Circle of the Stars is from Tasha's, and that is going to look basically the same as you saw it in Tasha's. So if you liked Circle of the Stars from Tasha's, you'll be happy because they didn't mess with it. Level 4, ability score improvement, and we're going to get ability scores at the standard levels. So 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19. And at level 19, you qualify for an epic boon, so that's what you should take. Then at level 5, we're going to get Wild Resurgence. Brand new feature. All right, this does not replace anything. Once on each of your turns, if you have no uses of Wild Shape left, you can give yourself one use by expending a spell slot. No action required. So if you are playing a Druid that uses a lot of Wild Shape, whether it's for changing forms or for another feature, because, subclasses give you other uses for your Wild Shape, that is going to give you an ability to get more Wild Shape uses by expending spell slots. Great. In addition, you can expend one use of Wild Shape, no action required, to give yourself a level 1 spell slot, but you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Also great. I have played Druids that are not Wild Shape based and are not subclasses where you're using Wild Shape for other things, and Wild Shape uses sometimes go unused, so it's nice to have some other use for them. So, great feature, and like I said, brand new, doesn't replace anything. Level 7, we're going to get Elemental Fury. Once again, this is a brand new feature. The might of the elements flows through you. You gain one of the following options of your choice. You gain either Potent Spellcasting, add your Wisdom modifier to the damage you deal with any Druid cantrip. This will look similar to features that Clerics get. And then Primal Strike once on each of your turns when you hit a creature with an attack roll using a weapon or a beast form's attack in Wild Shape. You can cause the target to take an extra d8 in cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. Choose when you hit. So this is a straight damage boost to your Druid, whether you use cantrips or physical attacks. Then we go all the way to level 15, an improved Elemental Fury. The option you chose for Elemental Fury grows more powerful as detailed below. Potent Spellcasting, when you cast a Druid cantrip with a range of 10 feet or greater, the spell's range increases by 300 feet. This does include spells like Thorn Whip, which is technically a melee spell, but it's a melee attack that has a 30-foot range. Qualifies here, so you could have a 330-foot range with your Thorn Whip, which is a melee attack. That's very interesting. Then Primal Strike, the extra damage of your Primal Strike increases to 2d8. And remember, this is once on each of your turns. But if you are playing a Druid, I think most Druids that are not Wild Shapers aren't using weapons, though you certainly can make one that does. It's generally not your best option. But if you are playing a Wild Shaper, like a Moon Druid, then you're almost certainly doing melee attacks, and it's going to be an extra 2d8 per round. I mean, you have to hit with at least one attack to get that. Assuming you're making multiple attacks, you're probably going to get one attack that hits. Then at level 18, we're going to get Beast Spells. While using Wild Shape, you can cast spells in Beast form, except for any spell that has a material component with a cost specified or that consumes its material component. So here's what's changed from the playtest. Nothing. It's the same as the playtest. Here's what's changed from 2014. In 2014, you eventually got the ability to cast spells while you were Wild Shaped. It came on in 2 stages. There were certain things you could do at one stage, and then certain things you could do at the next stage. And one thing that allowed you to do was cast spells without components. So if a spell had verbal or somatic components, you could just ignore them. That is no longer the case. You're going to have to provide your somatic and verbal components, just as you would have if you weren't Wild Shaped. Level 19 says Epic Boon. It's just an ability score increase. You just happen to qualify for Epic Boons now. Then on Capstone, level 20, Archdruid or Archdruid, whichever you prefer. The vitality of nature constantly blooms within you, granting you the following benefits. Evergreen Wild Shape. Whenever you roll initiative and have no uses of Wild Shape left, you regain 1 expended use of it. Nature Magician. You can convert uses of Wild Shape into spell slots, no action required, or a spell slot. Choose a number of your unexpended uses of Wild Shape and convert them into a single spell slot, with each use contributing 2 spell levels. For example, if you convert 2 uses of Wild Shape, you produce a level 4 spell slot. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. I should mention at level 20, you're going to have 4 uses of Wild Shape. If you were to expend them all this way, you would get an 8th level spell slot. Not a lot of ways in the game to get an 8th level spell slot that's additional to your class chart. In fact, I can't think of any off the top of my head. And then Longevity, the primal magic that you wield, causes you to age more slowly. For every 10 years that passes, your body ages only 1 year. This is a flavor thing. It likely will never come up in gameplay. Now, in the old rules, when you got to level 20, you got unlimited use of Wild Shape. We're not going to get that anymore. So what we saw at level 20 is Moon Druids got crazy because they could just Wild Shape every turn as a bonus action and get mammoth hit points. And, you know, good luck getting all of those down before the end of their turn. And then the next turn, they could just do it again. Now it is limited. But you're still, if you have any normal kind of gameplay, you're not going to run out of Wild Shapes anymore at level 20. And that is the base Druid. Let's look at the spell lists. So I want to give credit here to, and I'm sorry if I butcher this, Trezunto, who has posted on the 1D&D subreddit the changes to all the spell lists. So if you are interested in seeing the exact changes to all the spell lists, I've been talking about them in videos up to now. But from now on, I'm just going to refer to this because this seems to be accurate to me. So if we go to Druid, we're going to see new additions. You're going to get cantrips. Elementalism, which is a new cantrip. Message and Spare the Dying, which Druids didn't have before. And Starry Wisp, which is a new cantrip. Level 2, we're going to get Aid, which Druids didn't get before. Level 4, we get Fount of Moonlight, which is a new Druid spell, or a new spell, I should say, and very good for Moon Druids. And level 8, it says Befuddlement, which replaces Feeble Mind. Of course, Befuddlement is the same as Feeble Mind. It's been redesigned, but it's a redesign of Feeble Mind. Remove spells. You are no longer going to get Summon Draconic Spirit or Summon Dragon because the old version was available to Druids. I'm not sure why it was available to Druids, but it was. It no longer is. So the biggest change to Druid, of course, is Wild Shape, which was massively redesigned. Now let's take a look at the subclasses. Again, we're going to see some pretty big redesigns. We're going to start with Circle of the Land and Circle of the Land spells. So in the old version, you would pick a land type for your Circle of the Land Druid, and you got additional spells based on which one you chose. Now it says, whenever you finish a long rest, you're going to choose one type of land: arid, polar, temperate, or tropical. So you can change it out every time you take a long rest. You consult the table below that corresponds to the chosen type, and you have the spells listed for your druid level and lower prepared. So arid has Blur, Burning Hands, and Firebolt at level 3. Then you get Fireball at level 5, Blight at level 7, Wall of Stone at level 9. The standout here, as far as I can see, is Fireball. Fireball is normally not available to druids, and of course it's a standout spell that people love. So if you want your druid to be able to cast Fireball, take Circle of the Land. Then we have Polar. We get Fog Cloud, Whole Person, Ray of Frost, Sleet Storm, Ice Storm, and Cone of Cold. Most of these are available to druids already. Cone of Cold is not. So if you like Cone of Cold, that's how you would get it, is select Polar. Then we have Temperate, and we're going to get Misty Step, Shocking Grasp, and Sleep at level 3, Lightning Bolt at 5, Freedom of Movement at 7, and Tree Stride at 9. Two standouts as far as I can see on this list. The first is Misty Step, which druids are normally not very good at teleporting. There's not a lot of teleportation spells for them, particularly at lower levels, so Misty Step is very nice to have for your druid. I mean, Sleep, I guess, is a notable addition as well. Sleep is now actually good beyond level 1 and 2, so, you know, I don't think it's super powerful at higher levels, but it's okay. And then Lightning Bolt, normally not available to druids either. And then Tropical. So we're going to get Acid Splash, Ray of Sickness, and Web. Web is not normally available to druids, and it is a very, very good spell. Stinking Cloud, Polymorph, and Insect Plague, which are normally available to druids. So with each list, I know at least some spells that are not normally available to druids, but also in addition to that, when we're talking about prepared spells, it just adds a whole bunch more to your list. And the fact that you can switch them out with each long rest gives a flexibility that the old land druid just did not have. In addition, at level 3, we're going to get Land's Aid. As a magic action, you can expand a use of your wild shape and choose a point within 60 feet of yourself. Vitality-giving flowers and life-draining thorns appear for a moment in a 10-foot radius sphere centered on that point. Each creature of your choice in that sphere must make a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC, taking 2d6 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. One creature of your choice in that area regains 2d6 hit points, so there's kind of a Wither and Bloom kind of effect there, if you're familiar with that spell. The damage and healing increase by a d6 when you reach Druid levels 10, where it becomes 3d6, and 14, 4d6. The really nice thing here is the old land druid had no other use for wild shape. So, you know, obviously it's useful to have wild shape and be able to use it for utility. But sometimes there's no use for it, and then it would go to waste. But now we're going to have a use for it. It's a magic action, and you can essentially cast a spell-like effect with it that is very reminiscent of Wither and Bloom if you are familiar with that spell. And I think it's okay. I don't think it's a fantastic effect, but if I have no use of my wild shape for utility, this is a nice thing that's going to save me some spell slots. And it does scale with level. Okay, so we're going to move on to level 6. Natural Recovery. You can cast one of the level 1 plus spells that you have prepared from your Circle Spells feature without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you do so again. In addition, when you finish a short rest, you can choose expended spell slots to recover. The spell slots can have a combined level that is equal or less than half your druid level, round up, and none of them can be level 6 or higher. For example, if you're a level 6 druid, you can recover up to 3 levels worth of spell slots. You can recover a level 3 spell slot, level 2, blah, blah, blah. It's the same as Arcane Recovery, and it is the same as Natural Recovery in 2014. The difference here is the first paragraph is brand new. You're also going to get an additional spell that you can cast from your circle spells, and you can cast the highest level spell you have available on based on your level on that list. So if you are a 9th level Arid Druid, you can cast Wall of Stone, no spell slot required. So if we look at this, plus the second part of this that allows recovery, plus the ability to expend Wild Shape use to gain a spell slot, it is hard to think of any spellcaster that is going to be able to cast more spells than the Druid, or the Land Druid at least. There's kind of two main challenges to playing a spellcaster. The first is, the prepared spells, because they're limited. And if you are, a wizard, of course, you have all your rituals that you can cast that aren't in your spell book. If you are something like the Circle of the Land, you're going to have a list of spells that you can access that are from your subclass. But unlike all the other subclasses for other classes, we can switch ours out. They are always going to have a static spell list. We are going to have 4 different spell lists we can switch between. And then there's the other challenge, which is the number of spell slots. Casters run out of spells, and it's just going to be harder for a Land Druid to run out of spells than other casters. So if you want to play a spellcaster that really focuses on spell casting, the Land Druid is the one that can compare to things like the Sorcerer or the Wizard. All right, whether it's better or worse, it depends on your priorities, but it definitely is now comparable. And then level 10, Nature's Ward. You are immune to the poison condition, and you have resistance to a damage type associated with your current land choice in the Circle Spells feature, as shown on the Nature's Ward table, and it could be fire, cold, lightning, or poison, depending on your choice. So you're going to get 1 resistance and immunity to the poison condition. Does not give you immunity to poison, though. You can get resistance through tropical, but if you have selected any of the other land types, you have no resistance to poison at all. Finally, at level 14, we are going to get another use for our Wild Shape. As a magic action, you can expend a use of your Wild Shape and cause spectral trees and vines to appear within a 15-foot cube on the ground within 120 feet of yourself. They last there for 1 minute or until you have the incapacitated condition or die. You and your allies have half cover while you're in the area. That's going to give you a +2 armor class, all of you. And your allies gain the current resistance of your Nature's Ward while there. So fire, cold, lightning, or poison. As a bonus action, you can move the cube up to 60 feet to ground within 120 feet of yourself. So this is a nice little buff for you and allies that are relatively close to you, or not for you. You could, if you have, maybe you're way back from melee and you want to help the melee characters, you can move this over to them and it's going to help them instead of you. Land Druid looks great. It really does. It is hugely buffed from the 2014 version, which is good, because the 2014 version was not great. But we're going to get way more flexibility in the spells that we have prepared. We're going to get more spells that we can cast, and we're going to get multiple uses of Wild Shape. And one of the issues with the Land Druid was Wild Shape's not that great for non-Moon Druids. It's okay for utility, but if that doesn't come up, then you have no other use for it. Well, now we're going to be able to use it to create what is essentially like spells and nature-based spells that fit the thematics of the Land Druid. So if you want to play a Land Druid that never uses Wild Shape, you can easily do that now. And I've heard from some players who just don't think that Druid should all have to Wild Shape, or that should be baked into the class. Well, it's not really baked into the class anymore once you get your subclass, if you choose a subclass that has other uses of Wild Shape. And we've seen this before. We saw it with the Stars Druid and the Wildfire Druid, the Spores Druid. So this isn't new, but now I like seeing this mechanic brought onto the Land Druid to give them a cool use for the Wild Shape outside. In terms of how good this subclass is, it's a 4 out of 5 for me. All right. Circle of the Moon. This is a controversial subclass, always has been since 2014. The 2014 Moon Druid scales in an extremely wonky fashion. At level 2, it is super powerful, but then it just doesn't gain power at the same rate as anything else. So eventually it gets surpassed even by other druids. So it's kind of weird. And I do think they've done a better job of balancing it here, but this is a very, very different looking subclass. So we're going to get, at level 3, Circle Forms. You can channel lunar magic when you assume a wild shape form, granting you the benefits below. The maximum challenge rating for the form equals your druid level divided by 3, rounded down. That's the same as 2014. Armor class. Until you leave the form, your armor class equals 13 plus your wisdom modifier if that total is higher than the beast's armor class. This is new, and it is always going to be the case, or pretty much always going to be the case. Generally speaking, the forms you chose with Wild Shape have terrible armor class, and if the beast forms that we have in the player's handbook are any indication, that's not going to change. So this armor class boost is going to be significant. That doesn't mean you're going to have a great armor class. 13 plus your wisdom modifier is probably going to be a 16 at level 3 and eventually going to be an 18. That's an okay armor class. It's not fantastic, but it's okay, which is way, way, way better than it was in 2014. And then temporary hit points. You gain a number of temporary hit points equal to 3 times your druid level. So we're going to get a lot more temporary hit points, but that is going to be way, way, way less than druids were used to, especially at low level. So if you had a 3rd level moon druid in 2014, the form they were likely going to take was the brown bear. And when they did that, their hit points were replaced with the brown bear's hit points, which were 34. Here, if we're talking 3 times the druid level at level 3, that's 9 temporary hit points. Significant difference, right? You would have to be, level 11 before you get that many hit points in terms of temporary hit points. Of course, you're probably not selecting a brown bear anymore at level 11. Way fewer hit points, but keep in mind, you can't be knocked out of your form anymore unless you're rendered unconscious. So if we have temporary hit points equal to 3 times our druid level, that improves our durability, but when those are gone, we still have our regular hit points to draw upon while still retaining wild shape. Okay, so big change here. Way fewer hit points. Armor class is way improved. And we're going to move on to level 3, Circle the Moon spells. The 2014 Moon Druid got no additional spells for this subclass. Here it says when you reach druid level in the specified in the Circle of the Moon spells table, you thereafter always have listed spells prepared. In addition, you can cast the spells from this feature while you're in wild shape form. So the Moon Druid can cast while they're wild shape, but only these spells. Plus, they're getting additional preparations, which are these spells. Cure Wounds, Moonbeam, Starry Wisp, all okay spells. Level 5, Conjure Animals. The new version of Conjure Animals is super fun and super cool. Then level 7, Fount of Moonlight, brand new spell. Very good spell for someone like a Moon Druid that's going to be making melee attacks. It adds 2d6 to all your melee attacks. And keep in mind, this is in addition to the bonus you're going to get through your base Druid now that have been added as new features. In addition, you have the chance to potentially blind somebody you attack. And then Mass Cure Wounds, which is a decent spell. So this is a good list. And they can cast it all while wild-shaped. That's great. Then level 6, Improve Circle Forms. While in wild-shaped form, you gain the following benefits. Lunar Radiance. Each of your attacks in a wild-shaped form can deal its normal damage type or radiant damage. You make this choice each time you hit with those attacks. Used to be your attacks were treated as magical. They've gotten rid of all those features where you treated your attacks as magical because that doesn't do anything anymore. So now you can change your damage type to radiant. So if you're doing, bludgeoning damage and something's resistant to bludgeoning damage, then you can bypass that. And increase toughness. You can add your wisdom modifier to your constitution saving throws. That's going to be your concentration saves. In addition to other saving throws, constitution saving throws come up all the time. This is a very nice benefit. Then, level 10, Moonlight Step. You magically transport yourself, reappearing amid a burst of moonlight. As a bonus action, you can teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. Sounds like Misty Step, right? and you have advantage on the next attack roll you make before the end of this turn, so 1 attack. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum of once. I would hope it would be at least once. And you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. You can also regain uses by expending a level 2 plus spell slot. In other words, the same spell slot you'd use for Misty Step for each use you want to restore, no action required. So unless you're dealing with things like Counterspell or something, this is essentially like being able to cast Misty Step a certain number of times per day for free. The one difference I think that's notable is if you use up all your free uses, here you would expend a spell slot to regain a use, and then you could use it again, and it's not using a spell slot when you use it, which does affect the spellcasting rules if you want to cast a spell with your action. That's really the only point there that I would consider significantly different from Misty Step, but it's pretty close to getting free Misty Steps. Then we finish up at level 14 and Lunar Form. The power of the moon suffuses you, granting you the following benefits. Improved lunar radiance. Once per turn, you can deal an extra 2d10 radiant damage to a target you hit with a wild shape's form's attack. This is on top of everything else. Okay, so we've already seen multiple ways we can increase our damage with every attack. Yet more ways to stack on more damage. When you hit, you're going to hit really hard. And then Shared Moonlight. Whenever you use Moonlight Step, you can also teleport one willing creature. Teleporting with an ally is very useful. That creature must be within 10 feet of you, and you teleport it to an unoccupied space you can see within 10 feet of your destination space. There are no dead features here. This all looks pretty strong. The real question is, how good are the forms? Now, as I mentioned previously, I can't show you any stat blocks on the screen, but I can talk about them. And here's what I'll let you know. If you're going to select a Brown Bear, which is a challenge rating 1 creature, so it's available right at level 3, and this is the classic pick for the Moon Druid at lower levels. First off, the hit points don't matter. The Brown Bear in this player's handbook has significantly fewer hit points, but that doesn't matter at all because you're not getting those hit points, you're getting temporary hit points. The other thing to note is this Brown Bear does less damage with its attacks. So keep that in mind. The Brown Bear is just weaker than it was in the 2014 rules. So you can still select it. It'll still be okay because we're adding a lot of other things, but that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I'll mention is, beyond Challenge Rating 1, there are no beasts in this book except for one, and that is the Elephant at level Challenge Rating 4. So we have no Challenge Rating 2 beasts, no Challenge Rating 3 beasts, so we don't know what they're going to look like. What I can tell you about the Elephant is they've added a multi-attack to the Elephant. So the Elephant used to make like a tusk attack, really big, tough attack. Now it makes 2 tusk attacks, and each attack is less powerful than the 1 tusk attack before. And the reason this matters for a Moon Druid is because they have things like Conjure Minor Elementals, which is going to be crazy, and you might want to have a conversation with your table about how you're going to deal with Conjure Minor Elementals so it doesn't take over your game. But other spells like Fount of Moonlight as well, where, you know, you're adding damage to every attack. If you get multi-attack, then you're adding that damage more than once. And it is better for the Moon Druid to have multi-attack with 2 attacks that do less damage than 1 attack that does big damage. So this is good for the Moon Druid. I don't know whether the change to Elephant was because of Moon Druid, like if the Moon Druid was the consideration for giving the Elephant multi-attack. But if it was, and if that's what we see in the Monster Manual with other beasts, that's going to be really good for the Moon Druid, and the Moon Druid is going to be a very strong subclass. I am not going to rate Moon Druid today because I don't think I can. I just do not have the relevant information. Without any Challenge Rating 2 or 3 creatures to look at, I just don't know what those options are, and what those options are so important. If I'm looking at the 2014 Monster Manual, I still think the Moon Druid's not very good, because there's just not great Challenge Rating 2 creatures, and there's just not great Challenge Rating 3 creatures. And that's a long way to go without having any like good selections that you didn't have at level 3. So I think the success of this Moon Druid is going to highly depend on what we see in the Monster Manual with new beast redesign, particularly Challenge Rating 2 and 3. So when I see those, I'll probably revisit this. I'll probably let you know when I think of it at that time. But for now, I don't think I can rate this because we don't have a complete subclass yet. And honestly, I don't think we really have a Moon Druid yet until we get the Monster Manual. But that is only a few months away. Now we're going to look at Circle of the Sea. This is a brand new subclass and was one of my favorites in the playtest. So let's see where they landed. First off, we're going to get Circle of the Sea spells. So just like a lot of subclasses for spellcasters, we're going to get free preparations. So when we look at that initial preparations chart, and I said we're going to get fewer preparations, pretty much doesn't matter what subclass you pick, you're going to get a bunch of extra spells. So at level 3, we're going to get Fog Cloud, Gust of Wind, Ray of Frost, Shatter, Thunderwave. Level 5, we get Lightning Bolt and Water Breathing. Level 7, we get Control Water and Ice Storm. And level 9, we get Conjure Elemental and Hold Monster. Alright, there's some okay spells there. Nothing there that blows my mind, but these are okay spells. Then at level 3, we are also going to get Wrath of the Sea. This has changed from the playtest. In the playtest, I believe I mentioned that I thought this was a very powerful ability. It has been downgraded. Okay, so they have toned it down. Here's how it looks now. As a bonus action, you can expend a use of your wild shape to manifest a 5-foot emanation that takes the form of an ocean spray that surrounds you for 10 minutes. It ends early if you dismiss it, no action required, manifest it again, or have the incapacitated condition. When you manifest the emanation, and as a bonus action on subsequent turns, you can choose another creature that you can see within the emanation. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC or take cold damage, and, if the creature is larger or smaller, be pushed up to 15 feet away from you. To determine this damage, roll a number of d6s equal to your Wisdom modifier, minimum of 1 die. So here are the changes from the playtest if you were following the playtest. The damage type has changed, so in the playtest it did thunder damage, now it does cold damage. In the playtest, you could choose a creature within 10 feet of you to effect with this. Now you have 5-foot range with it. And in the playtest, at the end of your turn, this activated automatically, no action required. Very nice for your action economy. Now it requires a bonus action to activate, including to pick the creature and push them away and do damage to them. That didn't use to cause an action. Now, the advantage here is it doesn't have to be at the end of your turn anymore. So this might affect the order in which you do things, but requiring a bonus action every time, that's a pretty big cost added to this. I still think it's decent. I still think it's a fairly good feature, but I definitely don't think it's as good as it was in the playtest. Then at level 6, we're going to get Aquatic Affinity. The size of the emanation created by your Wrath of the Sea increases to 10 feet, so this is where it matches what it was in the playtest. In addition, you gain a swim speed equal to your speed. In the playtest, it also gave you the ability to breathe water. It gave you the water breathing spell as an automatic preparation. Now water breathing is part of our subclass spell list. So we're already going to have water breathing prepared. Basically we're building up our Wrath of the Sea to the point where it's almost as good as the playtest, but it's still using up our bonus action over and over. Level 10 is a great feature. Stormborn, your Wrath of the Sea confers 2 more benefits while active as detailed below. Flight, you gain a fly speed equal to your speed. Great. Resistance, you have resistance to cold, lightning, and thunder damage. That's 3 resistances. That's great too. So flight and 3 resistances. That's a banger of a level 10 feature. And then level 14, Oceanic Gift. Instead of manifesting the emanation of Wrath of the Sea around yourself, you can manifest it around one willing creature within 60 feet of yourself. That creature gains all the benefits of the emanation, including the fly speed, including the 3 resistances, and uses your spell save DC and wisdom modifier for it. In addition, you can manifest the emanation around both the other creature and yourself if you expend 2 uses of your wild shape instead of 1 while manifesting it. Now, one thing I do want to mention is, if you run out of wild shape uses, you only get 1 back on a short rest, and if you are out of wild shape uses, you can use your level 5 feature to give yourself 1 wild shape. So neither of those things are going to give you the ability to provide it for both an ally and yourself. You're going to need to actually have those 2 wild shape uses already. Very nice, because flight is good, 3 resistances is good, spreading it to multiple people, very good. Ideally, I would think you would want to look for people who don't have a regular use for their bonus action to provide this to, so that they can use the base feature of Wrath of the Storm as well. But it could be just your ally happens to need flight, and now you can give them concentration-free flight. Great. So, Circle of the Sea, what do we got? We got a pretty good level 3 feature. Level 6 is somewhat circumstantial. The big thing, I guess, for level 6 is increasing the emanation on your level 3 feature by to 10 feet. But like the swimming speed, it doesn't come up all that often. The level 10 feature, though, is great. Flight, 3 resistances. Level 14 feature essentially gives you the ability to double it up. So, also very good. So overall, level 6 is a little lacking. But other than that, I think it's a strong subclass. I am also going to give this 4 out of 5. And we're going to finish up with Circle of Stars. Like I said, if you are familiar with Circle of Stars from Tasha's, there's not a lot of changes here. But there are some. They're small changes, tweaks mainly, but I'll let you know what they are. Let's get into it. First off, at level 3, we get Star Map. This is the one that gives us the free castings of Guiding Bolt. In Tasha's, you could cast Guiding Bolt a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. That is changed to a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier per long rest. Okay, so a tweak there. Starry Form, which is kind of the premier feature of the Stars Druid and is our alternate use of Wild Shape, has not changed at all. So all 3 options are identical to what you saw in Tasha's. So just put them up on the screen, but they're the same. Archer, Chalice, Dragon, check your Tasha's, word for word, these are the same features. Then level 6, Cosmic Omen. So this is the one that allows you roll to see whether you're going to get Wheel or Woe. It gives you a reaction where you can add or subtract a D20 or a D6 from a D20 test. It's called Test here. In Tasha's, it's called Ability Check, Saving Throw, or Attack Roll. Same thing. The only change here mechanically is, again, used to be proficiency bonus times per long rest, is now wisdom modifier times per long rest. So again, a tweak there. Level 10, Twinkling Constellations, increases the Archer and Chalice features from 1d8 to 2d8. And while your Dragon form is active, you get a fly speed of 20 feet and can hover. No change at all from Tasha's. Also, you can, at the start of each of your turns, change which constellation you have working. So if you are using the Archer form at the beginning of your turn, you decide you want the Dragon form because you want the flight, you can just make that switch, which is very nice. And then level 14, well, in your Starry form, you become partially incorporeal, giving you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Again, no change at all from Tasha's. So really the only changes there were 2 features that used to be proficiency bonus per long rest are now wisdom modifier per long rest. In most cases, what that'll mean is at low levels, you'll probably have 1 additional use. At high levels, you'll probably have 1 fewer use. So it's not quite as dramatic a shift. But it does require that you concentrate on your wisdom. So if you're multi-classing into Druid and maybe wisdom isn't your primary modifier, then those won't scale if you don't increase your wisdom. All right? Circle of Stars, I would not say is any better or worse than it was in Tasha's. It's just been tweaked. I thought it was pretty solid in Tasha's, like a 3.5. Some people thought it was better than that, and if you do, you will still probably think it's better than that. But in my opinion, it's a 3.5 out of 5. So by my understanding, the 2014 Druid is one of the least commonly played classes in Dungeons & Dragons. I don't remember if it was right at the bottom. It might have been that and then Artificer. But that's not surprising since Artificer isn't in the core books. So yeah, Druid is not a popular class. I think a lot of that is the fact that Wild Shape was confusing and overwhelming to new players. I do think they have made steps to make it more accessible and easier to understand. But it's still going to be pretty overwhelming for a new player to, they want to play the Wild Shaping Druid and you throw a monster manual at them and say, shop for all the beasts in there and here's your restrictions. A new player is not going to want to do that, which is unfortunate. I think experienced players are probably going to gravitate to the Druid more just because we got strong subclasses here, we have significant improvements to the base class, and we actually know how Wild Shape works now, because I certainly didn't know how Wild Shape worked, and if you thought you did know how Wild Shape worked, there were probably assumptions you were making that I disagree with. I definitely think this is a better Druid. I think experienced players probably will play it more. Newer players, maybe if they're not playing a Moon Druid. If they are playing a Moon Druid, I don't know. It's still iffy for me whether I would recommend this or not. Maybe at lower levels where they only have to look through the player's handbook. But that is the Druid. And in my next video, I'm going to cover something controversial. We're going to talk about the Ranger, and my goodness, people hate this new Ranger, and I don't necessarily agree. So I'm going to have to try to persuade you, I guess, as to why I think what I do about the Ranger, which is that it's okay, that it's not great, it's not terrible, but that is what I'm going to cover in my next video. For the rest of this video, what I would like to do is I'd like to thank some people, some mage level patrons who help make this content possible. So I have some new names here. I'm going to butcher them, I'm sure. I apologize so much. I'm going to do my best. So we have Mr. Wonderful, Babrak, Blue Wolf, Cinnamon, John D, Descarpus 9, El Conquistadorito, Avengi R, Hatap, Jared Huberger, John Wayne, Joseph Robideau, Wu Carl Kong, Christopher R. Hunter, Mick Skill, Michael Michelle, Moxie, Nemo, Paul Suzak, Phil Sokoloff, Prometheo NTG, Big Chungus, Robert Schroeder, Ryan Wilmot, Shane and Todd Beyond, Simon Jester, Somnariel, Stephen Moline, Earshine, The Fantastic Emporium, Tim Clemesha, Trafoder, and Zukrohob, and Wade. All right. And if I messed up your name, message me on Patreon, tell me how to say it correctly. I did my best. But thank you so much for the support. Till next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.